trace an idea back to us, and we ask. Nathalie, you are muted, I think.
Sorry, I forgot to turn on the.
Can I have 15 seconds to respond to that?
Yes.
No, then it's on the stack. You can raise your hand, but then it's on the stack. Thank you.
Dan, I had your hand. Dan, are you still wanting to say something?
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Number one, I'm taking audio recording of this call too. Number two, Tasha, please stop describing what's going on our party as a conflict. I've already explained to you why I disagree. I believe it is one-sided misconduct by our officers. And I think calling it as a conflict is victim blaming. Now, I recall at one of the earlier meetings, you tended to agree with me that this mural thing of yours would not be an appropriate place to be discussing the bylaws. Yet I see that suggested in the bylaws suggestion of these minutes. Has your opinion changed?
I did not suggest that mural would be an inappropriate place to discuss the bylaws. I suggested that mural would be an inappropriate place that trying to get 40 people to wordsmith is a bad idea. And that what we would not want to do with mural is to spend hours and hours trying to come up with very specific language. But if, for instance, we have proposal A and proposal B in a couple of sections in the bylaws, mural will be a very useful place to try to get a sense of where people are landing and what they're leaning toward, and a straw poll version so that we know which pieces we need to talk about and which pieces we can just move to try to make a decision on. Seth.
Yeah, well, what I see happening is basically a group that's not aligned with the four pillars of the party, trying to participate, who's basically libertarians and not Green Party members. And a number of them are also either proto-fascist or directly fascist. And I actually don't want to platform any fascist ideas. I'm totally for deplatforming fascist ideas. So I need to see who's providing the ideas, to see where the fascists are trying to organize their ideas. So I think it's great in a group that actually is.
Tasha, are you going to permit this name calling?
And has
I
aligned
object
values.
to this.
But if the group
I'm not going
doesn't
to mute
have,
myself until
Dan,
Seth
you can't
stops
interrupt
calling
me.
people fascists. That's name calling.
Dan,
It's blatant.
stop interrupting.
Well, stop
Fascism
letting
is a
call people
political
fascists.
viewpoint.
That's blatant name calling.
It's a political viewpoint that there are certain
It's name
people that
calling.
have been attending these meetings that we've had to kick out before because they're actual fascists.
Okay.
So
Time.
Okay. So
I'm on the stack, and I'm going to say, Seth, chill. This was really out of line. We're freaking just trying to come up with a fucking agenda, and we're getting into these ridiculous arguments. It is so out of line. Let's go into the agenda. I find that the suggestion of having anonymous input excellent if we want to overcome these internecine arguments. And I want to remind you that you have not been particularly kind and respectful either. You know very well what I'm talking about. So let's get on to the thing. And by the way, this is
I need you to be specific.
You have called a naturopathic doctor, what was it? Like a commercial consultant for snake oil.
That's a totally accurate statement.
That is, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm going to tell you that this is a first warning. If you do a second time personal attacks and name calling, you're going to be removed.
I haven't done anything. You've used insulting language right here. That's your first warning.
Seth, I'm serious.
So
I'm
let's pause.
From the meeting.
Pause, stop. Okay. We have now spent, we are at 2:21, I think. We have gotten through one and a third agenda items, just reviewing. And my bad for letting this conversation go anywhere into debate, since we were going to go through the whole agenda before we even started debate. This dynamic that you all are in right now can eat your entire convention if you let it. I'm hoping that what you actually want is to move an agenda forward. Right? But if we spend the whole time arguing about who's right and who's wrong and whether this is a conflict or whether it's a dictatorial something or other, whether you will spend your whole meeting doing that, despite the best efforts of whoever's facilitating, because if that's what you want, I'm out. I'm not interested in facilitating a meeting where y'all argue about this for 4 hours.
And by the way, this is a steering committee setting the agenda. And so any further bad behavior and name calling and like conflict driving, and you're going to be removed from this meeting because this is going to go to the convention. This is like Tasha said, I don't have 20 minutes. Done.
So I have,
Tasha,
Tasha, can I
we're
can I
going to
make
do,
it very brief?
no,
Stop.
we're going to do a
pause,
poll.
pause,
Steering
pause,
committee is
pause.
gonna do a
Napoli,
poll.
pause, pause. I've got Amy's hand.
I'll be very short.
You?
I was just
No.
gonna suggest that we use Stack because we don't appear to be using it right now. Thanks.
Chuck.
Very, very briefly, Seth's complaint is something that would appropriately go to the large group consensus. So Seth has a perspective and a complaint. I think we should just understand that he's going to take something and take his remarks there. And that's my counsel to Seth. So keep
Right,
going.
which is what
I
I
just
thought
had a
we were
question
had already decided.
I don't know that Seth has formally done anything on that theme of that dark, negative, bad word he used.
Okay. So how about we just keep going through the agenda for a minute?
I
We
think
can
we're
hold.
going to poll SCC members, whether this is going to be anonymous or not, and that's how it's going to go to the convention.
So
Wait. What was the question, Natalie? What do you?
With that the mural is going to be anonymous. We're going to poll steering committee members. Because steering committee is charged with setting the agenda. I am in favor.
Okay.
Connor, Bob, Chuck, Suzia, are you in favor of using mural in anonymous manner to diffuse tension and have constructive participation instead of like looking who's posting so we can destroy people?
I would actually rather see a demonstration of it first.
We did last time.
I'm going to abstain.
My
I'm-
understanding from Tasha was that it clarified and unified. I heard that it was helpful. So I'd like to hear what Tasha says.
is that a question that you're asking me, or are you just affirming something?
Both. I'm affirming what I thought I heard, which was that you said that it helps with clarity and discussion.
Yes.
I don't know why we would want it to be invisible if it's so useful, honestly.
I think the question is not whether it would be invisible, but whether we need to ask people to put their names on their sticky notes so we know who said what.
And the idea, Suzia, is by having anonymous people participating to mural anonymous, we can focus on the ideas and not on who is posting, so that it would be much more idea focused and not personality focused.
Right, I thought that's what the squid was and everything else. I thought that was part of the point or the
Yes.
purpose of the funny icons.
Yes. Correct.
And some people here want to make sure that everybody's posting with their names. So that's what the poll for by the SEC, so we can move further into the setting the agenda.
I'm skeptical that we're all going to learn the mural in the amount of time you're allowing, and that engaging in the mural is going to make the meeting cumbersome. That's actually my concern. I'm going to defer to the judgment of the SEC. I'm inclined to abstain from all of this. If people want anonymity so they can, quote, feel safe, that's fine. I think I'm actually in Seth's camp on this, that full transparency and honesty is the way to go. And I expect that when we do voting, if we use show of hands on our Zoom, people are going to know how people are voting. So there's not going to be any, I don't believe in opaque And
Let
so,
me-
if it's, you know,
Let me,
that's my
let me
concern.
clarify for a minute, because I think there's some conflation going on here, right? I am not suggesting that we should not know how people are voting. I'm also not suggesting necessarily that it's going to help people feel safe. I am suggesting that in my experience, when ideas go up that are not attached to personalities, people find it easier to look at the patterns that they're seeing rather than moving immediately into their judgment about the humans. And since there seems to be a lot of judgment about the humans in the room, and I don't know how much there will be in the room of 40, it seems to me that having some piece of the processes that we're using, not all of them, right? The Zoom, when we go to vote, we're going to vote either by Zoom vote or by something else that's going to attach to people's names.
Correct.
So we're going to know what's happening there.
Correct.
Right. But, and there'll be discussion where people will say what they think, but the responding to the question about clunkiness and time, I promise you that spending 5 or even 10 minutes helping people learn Mural will take less time than trying to get 40 people to have space to say what they need to say about some given thing. Instead, in the Mural, they can each be putting a sticky note up all at the same time, and we can put them up and look at them, so that we don't have to do a giant go round where we hear from each person, or we don't have to simply not hear from 3/4 of the people because we don't have time.
Correct. I think it's a great idea. Connor?
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to say, while I share some of Seth's concerns and I understand them, I think Tasha answered his question, which is, yes, it's possible to do the non-anonymous thing. That was the question. I think that's been answered. But also I wanted to mention, since we have brought Tasha in and she's kind of the expert in these things, I think if she suggests something, we should probably go for it unless we've had an awfully good reason not to. So let's at least try what Tasha's suggesting. And we're almost a half an hour into this already.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Anybody opposed from the steering committee to using anonymous Mural? No, nobody from the steering committee opposed? Great. Perfect.
Okay.
Let's go on, Tasha.
Okay, so so that piece that I suggested adding means that we're going 20 minutes in that section rather than 15, Nathalie,
Perfect.
just for
Yeah,
adjusting timing.
I was gonna say.
So we start at 11:35, the next section. So continuing through this section, we review the decision-making process. We clarify how voting is going to be done on each agenda item. So I am not the expert in your decision-making, like which kind of voting needs to happen by bylaws in each setting. So I'm going to ask you to think ahead of time about whether there are agenda items that include an absentee ballot or no, whether they will be done by Zoom poll or by OPA, and do any require a 2/3 majority, right? So, and those pieces of information need to be attached on the agenda to each item so that people are clear, right? Here's how this decision gets made.
I have started doing that in the agenda, like here, for example. And I'll do that for each agenda. We'll do it for each agenda item.
Okay.
So
So,
I'm gonna take this out.
well, we should still, in that section, we should still just say to people as part of the agenda review, right? Notice that we've put this information, right? And if anybody has clarifying questions about it, let's ask them now. Right? So we give people the overview, and then we, in each thing they can see, right? Okay, Chuck.
It's an assumption that we're actually voting on bylaws. I thought that we're starting to adopt a practice of introducing bylaws and then voting on them at the subsequent convention. Is it the goal to vote to make a decision on the bylaws at this convention, Natalie?
So the bylaws were introduced in 2022. This is the second convention. We've had about 6 meetings. It's been very widely publicized. Yes, we're planning to adopt new bylaws with a 2/3 majority of supporting members present at the convention.
Okay, that's the goal. Okay, so that can all be done by a show of hands on the Zoom. That's what I counsel that we do.
No, I don't think it's a good idea, but we can go about that later. Let's go through the,
Let's go through the agenda and
Yeah.
we'll circle back to the process for voting in a little bit. Dan?
Yes, Natalie has mischaracterized what's going on here. Brian's bylaws in their original form in the initiator folder were submitted previously. What Alan has submitted is radically different. It's a whole new set of bylaws that takes the initial language and makes a bunch of very radical amendments. I don't consider that to have been submitted before. Only Brian's has. I've proposed some amendments to Brian's, and frankly, at this point, neither Brian nor I has accepted Alan's version. It's not likely that we're going to go into convention with even a unified version, and certainly I would dispute that Alan's has been seen before.
Alan's
So-
is brand new.
I'm going to respond, if that's okay. About 80%.
Yes, and before you respond, Nathalie, having read through a bunch of your documents in the last few days, my memory is that the language that exists now about bylaw adoption says that either the bylaws need to be considered by 2 different conventions, or they need to be considered at a convention after a series of meetings have happened to address them, which it seems like has happened. So I'm just reminding y'all of what the existing bylaws say about that, which doesn't mean that that's how you need to proceed, but it seems like that's a thing. Nathalie?
Yes, so we have adopted a large group consensus to invite participation about the bylaws. What Alan has written is about 80% what Brian proposed with some adjustments. And Brian is going to participate at the meetings on September 9 and September 11 to try to come to as close together as possible on a unified document. And we're going to highlight the areas of difference, and those can be brought up at the convention. There have been 2 conventions with a proposal to change the bylaws. There's been extended meetings, there's been extended input. This is going to be the second convention. At this point, trying to doubt the system is, I think, not good faith. But I respect your opinion that you have concerns. And since this is going to be decided at the convention by supporting members who are present, by a 2/3 majority of present supporting members, then there will be a much broader sense of what the party wants to do, and I will respect that.
Dan? I think you're muted, Dan.
Okay, number one, if you go back and review our bylaws and constitution, there is actually no text requiring 2 conventions or previous meetings. The only requirement is getting something in by 30 days in advance. But more importantly, again, that 20% difference is a mischaracterization, because it's the most important 20% of Brian's bylaws. And I can assure you that I don't, and Brian certainly also would not consider what Alan has proposed to be even remotely the same thing.
It seems
It's
to me that
it's very different. The provisions about kicking people out in particular are very different. The provisions to increase rather than decrease the power of the centralized authority. Okay,
We're
and
talking
we're
about
not
the
going to have a
agenda
long
here,
discussion
guys.
about that here. But
Pause.
What I'm
So
saying
we're
is-
in content now.
yes,
We
can
are
I get to the
debating
point?
content, which is not our job. We're trying to create a meeting agenda. So it seems like if there are enough people at the convention who are like, well, this hasn't had enough conversation and we're not going to vote yes on it right now, then it will get kicked down the road to the next convention.
Correct.
So I don't see a problem. I feel like the democratic process will make that decision in the convention. And it
Right.
seems, Dan, like you have 2 more opportunities to participate in meetings between now and then to help craft what ends up in front of the convention.
Actually, Tasha, our conversation.
And
is
you're
going more
already at
sideways.
1 minute. Maybe you could let somebody else speak, please.
As the author of and co-participant in one of the versions of the bylaws, I think this is relevant. If you don't want to hear
Okay,
it,
this
fine,
is
but
about the
let us-
agenda, not about the bylaws.
I know,
Okay,
but
Susia,
We haven't even gotten to the bylaws agenda item yet. Hang on for a minute. Let's go through the agenda.
Susia,
We'll
any
keep talking about
concerns?
this.
You have your hand up.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that I was unaware of there being a bylaw committee. I knew you were meeting with Alan Sundell, and I knew that Brian Setzler had stepped back in with his bylaws from
My goodness, Susia, where have you been?
just before he ran for elections, but I did not realize there was a bylaw committee. I'm sorry.
We sent like 3 email blasts.
That's-
We've been talking about at the steering committee meetings. We've been talking about it at the convention. It's been posted on the social media. It's been posted on our webpage. We've posted the meetings. We've posted videos of the meetings. I don't know how else to reach out to you because your cell phone doesn't work. If so,
I don't have a cell phone. I haven't
Yeah.
had a cell phone for a year and a half
I
now.
know, so I don't know how am I going to reach out to you, but all of that has been out. So I don't know.
And it was actually titled a bylaw committee. I mean, it
But maybe
does
we
not
can-
look to me like there was a bylaw committee. That's all I'm
There is
saying.
not a committee, we're using the large group consensus. So we have an initiating group, a responding group. We're having meetings so people can have input. There's 2 more meetings. We've already had 4
All
meetings.
right,
We have
I'll jump
recording.
onto that.
Great,
And
great.
everything is posted on the
pause,
webpage
naturally
for the
pause,
convention.
pause, pause. Suzia just said she would jump on those meetings. Great, we're
Thank you
done,
very
we're moving.
much. I'm
Okay.
glad that we
So-
clarified that.
We open the floor for any proposed changes to the agenda and consider and decide on any proposed using your decision-making process. Yes, that's how I understand this meeting is supposed to run. Introduce the large group consensus process, which has been in use, yes? So like, I'm assuming it's been, it's been introduced in the sense that people have been invited into it for the bylaws process, but you're wanting to do some kind of little overview that says, here's what it is and here's how it works. Is that correct, Nathalie?
Correct.
This is
Because
my clarifying question. Correct. Okay.
Correct. We haven't really had like a mediation consensus process. So this is where you are instituting that so we can have a process for conflict resolution. And I think that it would be good for John to say, hey, this is how it works. Get involved. There is a 3rd mediation group. We need more people to participate in that and to explain what the process has been to develop the bylaws.
Great. Okay.
And also because there's some items that will go through the large group consensus. So to explain to people how they can get involved and how things will proceed.
Okay. So, and then a call for donations and a succinct intro to campaigns. So I'm looking at this and it's going to take at least 20 and maybe 25 minutes to do what we just described.
Yeah.
So let's build it in.
Do you want to go 30 minutes to give us ample time, considering that we have such a collaborative?
I don't know that we have that. Let's call it 25
Okay.
for now. Keep our fingers crossed that people can stay focused. So then we start. This will actually be 11:40, right? 15 plus 25 is 40. So this will be 40, and then we start here at 40. And then this goes to noon. Okay, so then we have 20 minutes to approve the minutes from the January and March conventions. We approve the minutes of both January and March meetings reflecting decisions and voting processes at those conventions. Adding language to the January and March 23rd minutes. So I have a process question here. My assumption about this is that addition to the language will happen before the convention so that the thing the convention's being asked to adopt includes that language. Is that everybody else's assumption? Is there anybody whose assumption is different than that?
Yeah, I made a note in the sidebar about how to approach this, the minutes. I don't think we should, I think we should add language that says absentee voting was not applied. Just a statement of fact.
Very
Don't make a
clear.
judgment.
The contention was that it was disallowed.
I take, wait, can I talk for a moment, Natalie, and don't interrupt me, please?
Sorry, apologize. We went,
Natalie-
you know what, we went over this at that last meeting.
So
The proposal, steering committee says yes or no, period. We have another 20 minutes for the rest of the agenda. We talked about it like for 45 minutes last time.
here's,
That's it. That's it.
Natalie,
That's it.
you're interrupting me.
You are taking too much time, too much space. This.
You're
ridiculousness
wasting time
is-
right now, Natalie.
I'm like, done.
Natalie, you represented in an email that you were going to do everything that you could to not confirm the blessing of the Green Liberty resolutions. So the way that we need to do this is a perfunctory, accept the minutes or don't accept the minutes. But the clarification needs to say, if we accept the minutes, that nullifies the SCC decision to reject that convention for Green Liberty.
Chuck, we did talk about this at the last meeting and we did not have consensus for that second part. We did not. The steering committee was not in agreement.
I'm going to say this at the convention. I'm going to.
You may say whatever you want at the convention, but stop now because we need to keep
Okay.
moving. Justin,
I'm proposing language.
I hear you. But we made this decision at the last meeting. Justin,
Thanks. I'll be brief. I just think that the minutes should just reflect the fact that there was some disagreement about that. I wasn't present. But I assume since I'm on the SEC and I know that the policy I voted on wasn't followed, I assume there was some disagreement at the convention about how it would be handled. And as long as the minutes reflect that, I'm satisfied.
hear that. I feel like as your facilitator, I am going to do part of my facilitator job, which is to remind you of what you decided last time. And what you decided last time was that this language would be what was there, that it would be put into the bylaws ahead of time, and that therefore that's what people would be voting on. And this approval of Chuck's proposal to send the Liberty resolution through to the large group consensus was also.
Yeah, I think when we left it last time, it was
Sorry, say again, Justin? You're breaking up over there.
I'm not looking to make any changes.
Great, okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No worries, thank you. Okay, so, and then there's also the approval of sending 2 recently adopted platform planks through the large group consensus process.
What planks are those?
Was that a clarification question, Chuck? I didn't hear you.
Yes,
We went
yes, I don't
to a
know what those
meeting
are.
about this. Approval of Chuck's proposal to send Liberty resolutions to the large group consensus.
You don't need an approval. The convention doesn't
Are
need
you
to
out of
vote
your
on it.
mind? We talked about it for a whole hour on Sunday.
Then put me down as a block on all of the things you're talking about. The process, Tasha,
wait,
is
you
to
want to
accept
take
the
it out?
minutes or not. And we need to have time to talk about the minutes. I offered
Oh
to
my goodness.
submit the Green Liberty resolutions to the large group process.
Yes,
So
Right.
it would go through that process.
perfect.
We don't
That's
need a
exactly it.
decision of the board or anyone to do that.
That's
This is a technical perfunctory matter, accept or reject. And people at the meeting need to understand the implications of.
That's
of
exactly what we're doing.
accepting or
That's
rejecting, that's
exactly what
all.
we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly
Right.
what we're doing.
I don't know if
So-
it says,
So Chuck, let me get clear about one piece of what you just said that confused me. Are you suggesting that you can unilaterally send the Liberty resolutions through the large group consensus process, so you don't think that needs to be talked about at all at the convention?
we can, if people want to talk about it, they can talk about it. I just voluntarily am offering to go through that process with the Green Liberty resolutions because it's considered a way to reach consensus. But what I want to close the circle on is the business of the March convention. And really the issue of the Liberty resolutions are almost a moot issue, because the issue is technically about, can the SEC reject a vote of the convention or not?
So, okay, so we're going to pause again because we spent 2 hours on this on Sunday. And I will remind you of what I said then, which I will stick to, right? You can spend this entire friggin' convention arguing about that. There is not going to be consensus about it. There are two Nathalie, stop. There are two very different positions on this, and they are not going to change.
Let's take a vote.
Well, right. So you can vote. That's fine.
We already did on Sunday.
But what the SCC did on Sunday was to accept this language in the January and March minutes. And then Chuck, you proposed that we then also talk about how that means that this SCC thing is nullified, blah, blah, blah. You did not get a consensus vote out of the steering committee. You can bring anything you want to the convention, right? It's apparently a democratic process on that level. I'm working on the agenda, which is the job of the SCC to create. The SCC did not approve having a larger conversation about whether accepting the minutes when it includes the statement, decisions taken among those present by majority decision of attendees at the convention, members present at the convention voted to limit voting to people present at the convention and disallow sending absentee ballots. That language included in the minutes allows you to vote on the minutes, right? It seems to me that the substantive piece of this is going to be resolved in two places. It's going to be resolved in what you adopt in terms of the new bylaws. So it'd be nice to save a bunch of time in this convention to talk about the new bylaws language, because that's going to govern how this stuff happens moving forward. It's going to be addressed by whether or not the resolutions that were passed at those conventions embraced by the larger group, right?
Tasha, we're allowing 20 minutes to approve the minutes. So you can just leave it as it is. Leave that 20 minutes of an introduction, some explanation. There'll be an opportunity for some discussion about this. And then we'll basically have a show of hands by those at convention to accept these minutes or not. That's fine.
But I promise you,
I think some of this, I think the number 2 should be just pulled out. It'll save time. It's a waste of, but if it makes people feel good to leave it in there to kind of highlight that, I voluntarily will do that. It doesn't need an act of the convention to affect point 2 is what I'm saying. And approval of 2 recently adopted plan. That's a whole nother, I don't even know what that is. That's
right. So let it go for the minute. That was okay.
But there's other hands. Seth and Dan.
I understand that there are other hands, and we've now been in this meeting for 50 minutes, and we are less than an hour into the agenda. Are these comments about agenda design, or are they about content? Because we are not going to debate content right now.
Agenda design.
Dan, quickly.
Okay, just for 2 seconds. So we don't have a steering committee, we have a coordinating committee, and the difference is important. Now, regarding the approving the minutes, that's up to the convention. The SEC can say whatever it wants, but the convention can do whatever it wants regarding approving the minutes.
Right.
Regarding the large group consensus process, Chuck is correct that there's no approval needed from a convention or anyone else. Any member is free to do that. Regarding item number 3, taking 2 platform planks and putting them through a large group consensus process, that's fine. Anyone can do that. That does not make them subject to having to be reapproved at the January convention. They cannot be removed except by a 2/3 vote of convention. None.
Right. I think the plan was to take them through the large group consensus process, all of this stuff, and then present it to the January convention for a 2/3 vote. That seems
Except they don't need a 2/3 vote to be retained. They would need a 2/3 vote to be overturned.
I understand. I'm just that's the January agenda, which is not my concern. Seth, quickly, please.
I just want to make it clear that when the process gets interrupted reviewing old stuff, that's not appropriate. And if that continues, they should be muted when that's happening. If we've already decided that, that should not be allowed.
I hear you. If I had a way to herd all of you in the direction I want you to go, we would be in a different place, but I'm not. Yeah. In my experience, essentially telling people they have to shut up never works. So what I'm trying to do is to keep us focused on creating a meeting that's going to actually accomplish what you want to accomplish. So 11:50 to noon, we get a 10-minute brain break. Good. Thank you, Nathalie, for shifting that in there.
I'm gonna change the times to reflect.
Yes, great, thank you. So then we put an hour for review of the existing bylaws, key issues and processes, followed by an OPA vote supporting members present at the convention. So presentation of the process and demonstrate. So we don't need a demonstration of mural here because we have already done that up top. So brief presentation of problems with the existing bylaws. And then presentation of any existing bylaws sticking points, right? So any decision points, clarification questions. So this is a facilitator process thing. I would really like, we failed miserably in this meeting, but I would really like in the convention to separate clarification questions, which are questions about, I'm not sure what this means, or I'm not sure how exactly that, whatever those clarification, curiosity-based questions. Like, I need a little more information about questions as opposed to debates or opinions, which we will capture on mural and then respond to as best we can. Right. And then we have a discussion of those sticking points, again, captured on mural. Hopefully we do some breakout groups here and we get people to talk a little with each other and then put up their ideas, right? Anything they want. So if we have the sticking points, I'm presuming the sticking points are going to look something like, in this section of the bylaws, we have two different opinions about how they should look. Here's option A, here's option B. We use mural to get a sense of where people are at, what their ideas are, how they're responding to those things, right? So, and we then moved from there to figure out where we are and to figure out if we can make any small modifications to address concerns or whatever those things are. And then there's if we can't just come to consensus, if it isn't clear that we have consensus on, okay, we're all going with option A, or we're all going with option B, or we're all going with option B with these two words changed, or whatever it is, then we go to a vote. The vote is not done on mural, right? We use mural to capture the final language so everybody knows what they're talking about, right? People can look at that and then they can vote. Then there's a lunch break. And then you go into the campaign stuff, at which point I am no longer your facilitator. You'll just use an internal facilitator for those sections. All right. Clarification questions about the agenda before we debate, before we do any other kind of clarification questions about the agenda. Dan, I see your hand. Is this a clarification question or are you holding for content?
Well, for content, but.
Okay, so hang on a second. Let me make sure there aren't any other clarification questions. Anybody have clarification questions?
I actually do.
Yes.
Very briefly, you're going to be able to determine whether we use mural for the sticking points or breaking points. And do you want to have like people already distributed in groups, and how many groups do you want?
Yeah, so we should figure out groups. I mean, it will depend in part on how many humans there actually are, but I would like those groups to be relatively small. So 3 to 5 people in a group so that they actually have time to talk to each other. So maybe maybe try for 3 or 4 folks in each group. And you can just set them up based, you know, on, you could assign them randomly, that would be easy, right? That would be the simplest thing to do, is to just let Mural, tell Mural how many groups there need to be and let it assign people.
Do you want also clarification? Do you want to do like one set of groups and then reconvene, regroup again, different set of groups so that people get mixed up? Just let me know, because
It's a good question, and I often make that decision on the fly in the moment, because sometimes it seems like it's going to be super useful for people to regroup with the folks they were talking to, and sometimes it seems like it'll be a whole lot more useful to move them.
Okay.
So are you okay with my making that call on the fly?
100%.
Okay, great.
I'll make you host of the meeting, so you have also control over the Zoom.
Right. Perfect. Any other clarification questions before we go to content stuff? Okay. Can we do just a real quick before we move on to other content? Does anybody have clarification questions on the stuff from 2:30 on? Clarification questions first for that stuff from 2:30 on. Amy.
Thanks. Apologies. I was keeping my eye on my stopwatch, so I'm not actually sure if this was covered after 2:30. But Tasha, do you have anything in place? So, and believe me, I'm hoping this does not become a thing. If people are taking advantage of anonymity to be abusive or harass other people, do we have a mechanism in place to deal with that?
I will delete any sticky note that includes a personal attack.
Thanks. That's all I wanted to know. Appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. Any clarification questions about 2:30 on?
No, that's pretty simple. It's just, there's just a lot going on in terms of campaigns, and also to leave with something that's positive and constructive.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go back to content stuff then. Who has content stuff?
Oh, the only thing is we need to figure out who's going to facilitate that last, this we need to figure out.
Okay, hold that thought for a minute, Nathalie. Dan.
Okay, well, right off the bat, reading through this, why is Brian, who is the author of the original proposal, being set to present just for 5 minutes problems with the existing bylaws, while Alan is going to be presenting proposed bylaws? Brian is not, he's not presenting the existing bylaws. He presented his own proposal. And I'm telling you right now, Tasha, that regardless of these supposedly official meetings of Natalie's, we're not likely to come to anything remotely resembling a consensus with Alan and the people that are in his group on this. And so we're going to be, strictly speaking, entering the convention with 2 different proposals. And I believe that trying to set up any kind of a process in a convention to wordsmith 2 very, very different things. And that 20% difference Natalie was talking about is a big difference. Trying to wordsmith that into anything coherent or even wise is unwise, because these kind of bylaws have to be
Dan,
done.
you're at 1 minute. You're at
Okay.
1 minute.
Okay, so
Well,
Dan, I
that's
totally hear your concern, and I do not want to get sucked into a bunch of super challenging wordsmithing conversations. My presumption is that the places where there is not agreement will be highlighted in the document. I believe that's what Nathalie said, will be highlighted in the document that's presented. So you would have a document that comes out of these meetings that have been happening that are going to include both Brian and Alan. Yes, Nathalie? Right?
Yes,
These are all, Brian's going to be at the next couple meetings. So he's going to be looking at this thing. And there will be, in the places where there is not agreement, there will be 2 different proposals. And
Here's Brian. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. There.
So
Brian.
the goal will be to look at, well, where do we have consensus, right? Where is nobody worried about this?
So-
What all feels fine? And then where are the places where we have disagreements, at which point we try to get a sense of where the group as a whole is about those differences, not through a vote initially, but through comments and straw polls, so that I, as the facilitator, have a sense about where we want to focus the conversation. We focus the conversation on the places where there's either a lot of conflict or where there's some attempt to modify something, right?
And I
We
would,
look at it and we can always just go to a vote and say, are we voting for option A or option B? And if we get the 2/3 majority for one or the other of them, then that decision is made. And if we don't, then we're going to kick the can down the road, right? And maybe we kick the can on the whole bylaws thing, or maybe we find a way to kick the can on the 1 or 2 decisions that still need to be made and adopt the rest of it. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but we won't know until we're in the meeting. And I totally hear you that the decisions are going to get made by the meeting.
so I have my hand up and I want to, then I would like you to chill a little bit, same Chuck, because these were like drafts that were just put as an idea. This is not the final agenda. That's why we're having this meeting here. So, and Brian, I don't know that you can participate because I don't see your telephone or your devices turned on, but I just wanted, oh, there you are. Okay, great. So the reason I put here presentation, a brief presentation of problems with the existing bylaws is because this has been a big issue for Brian for a long time. So I wanted to give Brian the opportunity to discuss those. We can give him then another 5 minutes to discuss how he structured his initial proposal. I have no problem with that. I mean, I didn't think about it. It was not an effort to not put it out there. It was just, you know, how are we going to talk about the bylaws? And that was like a draft. So Dan, if I hear your suggestion is to have Brian talk about the problems with the existing bylaws, you know, I would like Brian to keep it to maybe 5 minutes because Brian tends to extend himself when he talks. So he can be.
You're at 1 minute, Natalie, sorry.
Thank you. And then put initiation team group presentation.
Great. So I'm hearing Natalie's creating room for that as a possibility here. Okay.
May I just comment on that? I appreciate that. 5 minutes is enough time to explain the problem. And I'm just jumping on here. I'm at work, but that's perfect for me. 5 minutes to explain the problems, and then I'd like 5 minutes to present my solution.
Perfect.
And then I think it's, what if I'm understanding it? It's like Alan Zindell's taken mine and added to it. And I'm glad to work on between now and then to continue to see where we can come together. But at the end of the day, right now, like, I don't want to mucky mine with his, and we can highlight the differences, and he's glad to hear his presentation. But I think that's a fine process.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Chuck.
I submitted a mediation in the large group on the bylaws. So there is a request for both the initiating and the responding groups to elaborate on their bylaws. I think that's too ambitious to try to actually vote on bylaws on these things at this convention. And I think we should strike the intention to open vote on this and just make it clear that this is going to be all about idea development. Tasha, you could use your mural thing and then kick the can for the actual vote to the January convention. That's my proposal.
It's a proposal made by your group, and it's going to be taken up at the convention, not kicked down the road.
Well, that's your intention. I hear what you're saying now.
Thank you very much.
The convention can always make a decision to kick it down the road. That is always in its power. Dan.
Yes, as a member of the initiating group, I don't agree that 5 minutes is enough time for presentation. The basic point of this convention was supposed to be to consider these bylaw proposals, and the initiators, the authors, need to have time to explain to everyone there what it's about and to answer their questions.
Okay, so hold on for a second, Dan. Hold on for a second. I'm holding this idea, right?
Okay. We need more time.
I understand. I hear you. I get it. Hang on.
I want time. And,
Yes.
and, okay, besides that, let me get to the other thing.
How much time do you want then? Because you already
We-
have 10 minutes between
should-
the initial and
This
the
is
Brian.
this is a 5-hour convention for this particular purpose. We can find half an hour just for the presentations, each one
For
of them.
your presentation, half
Now-
an hour?
Since I don't consider
Right.
the committee meetings to be official, or I'm skeptical that there's going to be some kind of official version of what all the differences are coming out of that. I don't want to see a committee voting on saying, well, this is going to be the presentation, and I really hope that does not happen. And
Okay, so wait, that's a process thing and I want to address it clearly.
well,
What I
there-
heard from Nathalie was that there is not, in fact, a bylaws committee, that there is a series of meetings being held in an attempt to move this process forward and
And there are
getting
other-
clarification about where there's agreement and where there's disagreement, and developing language that can be put in front of the convention that's like, okay, well, we seem to have consensus on, this 82%.
Yeah,
And
okay.
here are the places where we think we have
Let me
disagreements.
get,
and
let me
here
get
is
you
some
back and
language.
save us some time here. There's a lot of other discussion going on outside that quote unquote official stuff.
Well,
So at the end
whatever,
of, at
but
the
if
end of
it's
the
not
day,
part
we
of the
have
official process, then it needs to get blended into the official
the
process. Or
official
it's not used-
process is we have
Dan, you're
two-
at 1 minute. Dan, you're
Okay,
at
well,
1 minute.
let me, this is important. The official process is we have two different proposals that were submitted by 30 days in advance.
Yes,
If
and
we don't end up
a
with
series
one,
of
vote
meetings
spaghetti
that
for
are,
time.
and in a series of meetings that are attempting to bring more people into that conversation.
And lots of other discussions too, that may or may not result in a single proposal. I
No
think it
one is
probably won't.
suggesting there's going to be a single proposal.
Okay, let's
No
go
one
on
is
then. Let's
suggesting
move
that.
on.
Justin,
Yes, thank you. So just to bring some focus to this, agenda items, yes, 30 days in advance, but that's like no guarantee that they're going to be on the draft agenda that we start off the convention with. So, and then on top of that, items, let's be clear, are they going to be introduced for one of three things: introduction, discussion, or decision? And if we're saying that they're being introduced for decision, we have to decide if those things are ready to be decided on September 17th.
or at least you have to decide whether you want the convention making a decision about whether it's ready to make a decision on that. Because if you need a 2/3 majority to pass this, it seems like,
I feel like it's the agenda committee's job to queue this up, right?
Yeah.
And for whatever, if the convention decides it doesn't want to decide on what we put together, then that's up to the convention. They have that right.
exactly right. So just again, putting the facilitator hat firmly on my head, it is often the case that we do not know until we are in a meeting whether we're going to be able to come to consensus on something or come to a vote, a votable total support for something, in which case we improvise as we get there, right? We get as far as we can, and then we make a decision about where to go from here. And maybe that means plugging what we've got back into a longer consensus process and then voting on it in January. Or maybe it means voting on the pieces that we're ready to vote on and somehow moving part of it into a larger consensus process. We can sort that out when we get there. We aren't going to know ahead of time what's possible. So also I heard very clearly from Dan. Brian, I see your something over there. Hang on just a second. I heard Dan saying very clearly that he did not feel like this was enough time to talk about all of this. So right now, let's just be clear what we've got. We have from 12:10 to 2 o'clock for a conversation about the bylaws. And that process could either be a whole lot of presentation with a bunch of the 40 people in the room sitting and listening, or it can be a more interactive process where we try to get as many voices as possible in. As a facilitator whose job it is to support participatory decision-making, I would like to lean in that direction and keep the presentation short so that people have time to digest them and talk about them and respond to them and think about them. But but there is a very real question, and I agree, there's a very real question about whether we can get through this whole agenda in 5.5 hours or whatever you've got for it. You have spent long portions of the last couple of meetings talking about one very small piece of this. So I am sympathetic, Dan, to your concern that we don't have enough time for this. And the facilitator's question is, well, what do you not want on the agenda if we're going to expand this item? Because it's not like we can pull time out of a hat. It would mean doing that instead of something else. So that, this is the eternal meeting design conundrum.
Yeah.
So
Can
I see
just
I see Chuck and Dan's hats in the air. Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, and I don't want to, I only have about 10 minutes to say, and I appreciate everybody working on this. And I want to, it's interesting that we have, I'm just going to kind of some stream of consciousness here a second. I think 2 hours should be enough total time to deal with this. I do not think that trying to make a bunch of changes and including more cooks in the kitchen at the convention is the way to try to get this done. I think what's on the table, if there's a minor little tweak, there could be a minor little tweak, but I think if you try to open up the process and think we're going to come out with something better because of, a bunch of people scrambling around at the last minute, I just don't think so. I like what's being done, and I'm open to, I just think we worry so much about what's happening here because it really isn't altering the PGP that much. It's just my proposal is really just giving us a framework for organizing differently that I think will free us up from the problems we've had. It doesn't, give anybody a bunch of power and authority to do anything. And so,
Brian, I'm sorry, you're at 1 minute.
I'm really, it's just like, I think 2 hours should be enough.
Right.
I don't think that we should be spending it trying to involve 40 people who haven't been involved up to this point to try to improve things.
Thank you. I hear that. Okay. So I see Chuck's hand and I see Dan's hand. You've both spoken a lot. Are there people who have not spoken much in the meeting who have things they want to say before we move into that stack and take folks who have said a lot already?
Last thing I just want to say, and I'm glad you're here facilitating, in the consensus process, like in a presentation, it's really about like understanding things and making sure they understand. So I think a presentation, and we should be able to present in 5 minutes, but then having the questions asked so that they fully understand what's going on. And that could be a enlightening kind of process that might work and help out. So like people like, okay, I get it. And being able to draw pictures on the board, having whiteboards so you can draw pictures and things. But that's all my comments. And I thank you, and I'll just take it find out what happens later. I got to run.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Bob.
Bye-bye.
Bob, I see your hand. We have not heard much from you today.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say that I think members at the convention are going to be more interested in whether we're going to discuss endorsing Cornel West or maybe, the presidential race and getting stuck with Biden and Trump, or, perhaps that climate change is obviously accelerating with more fires and whatnot. And we're arguing about this minutiae, and it's all personal conflict. And I just wish we could find some way of just getting out of this, because we're stuck in a dysfunctional pattern where we just keep arguing the same things over and over. And I'd like to see some way of getting out of it, but I don't see a systemic way to do that. Sorry.
Thanks, Bob. Seth?
Yeah, kind of related to that point. I think it's important that we as a party are actually have unified vision about those particular things that Bob is talking about. So I do think it would be good to have more in the agenda to talk about the proactive things that we're doing. Though I do think fairly early on in the convention, we should have a couple very quick items where we do, I proposed 4, fixes, proposals for the convention that aren't on this list. And this group might not want to put them forward, but I will be proposing them at the convention itself if it's not put on the agenda. But expulsion of Dan for cause, expulsion of Marv Sands for cause, decertify Land Greens chapter, and decertify Liberty Caucus. And if we can clean the party up with the people who aren't in line with our vision, that would go a long way to preventing this interference from happening.
Thanks for that info, Seth. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Bob because he's had fewer minutes on the floor than Dan or Chuck, but you are next, Dan and Chuck, so hang on. Bob? Bob,
He
you are,
probably didn't lower his hand.
He never lowered his hand.
okay, great. I will not worry about that then. Okay, Chuck.
I just want to say what Brian said. Notice that this bylaws thing has 2 hours almost. That's a lot of time. And I think with your mural thing, you might actually enable the group to advance their thinking in that time. And I think you can take the pulse of the group and say, are we ready to make a bylaws change? I kind of doubt that's going to happen and be accomplished. Finally, I've advanced a mediation proposal in the large group. So I would like time as the mediation group to have a chance to share what the responses I've gotten to my queries as part of that process. So 5 minutes. So if we have the initiating, the responding, I would like to represent the mediation group, which would be a report on if I see a potential for a reconciliation of differences or whatever. Finally, the Zundel proposal, which says final, actually has
Doc, you're
bylaws.
at 1 minute already.
It has features of bylaws and it has features of constitution. So it's actually not remotely a final document. It's not remotely a final document. So that should be made.
I hear that. Okay, so I'm holding, there's a process request here for a report from the mediation group. So I'm holding that in my head for a minute here. I'm scanning for hands. I see Nathalie.
Okay, I'm
Has
pretty
Natalie
sure.
talked more than me? I had my hand up.
Dan, I didn't see your hand. Sorry. I
Go
thought
ahead,
I
Dan.
thought you had chosen to put your hand down. Okay, so hang on, Nathalie. Dan, go ahead. You were next.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on what Brian said. I'm going to just ignore what Seth just said, though I think it was atrocious. I agree with Brian that it's not appropriate to expect people that have never seen all this stuff to see these bylaws to simply discuss them amongst themselves and get anywhere. What we have is 2 proposals. The people making the proposals should be able to explain and spend a lot of time defending the proposals and make sure everyone understands them. That's all I'm asking. I do think that a lot of the stuff that comes after that is stuff that we do over and over again at conventions about these initiative petitions. And I see it's expendable in the context of this. This was supposed to be a convention about these bylaws. I'd like to see more time. Thank you.
Justin? Oh, sorry, Nathalie, you were next, and then Justin.
Go ahead, Justin. I speak a lot.
Just real quick, I just want to echo Bob's sentiments. I do think we need to make room in the agenda for some items that both energize the party and those things that bring us together. Maybe we could construct this agenda in, like, I don't know, a compliment sandwich sort of format where we start out with maybe some positive things and end with some positive things, and maybe try to sandwich these disagreements in between. I don't know, but I do think Bob has a point, and I just wanted to show my support for that.
Great. So Nathalie, hang on. I'm going to let Amy in since she's not spoken so much. And then you'll be next.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to keep it simple. I just wanted to support Bob and Justin and also remind folks that there are a grand total of 4 Green presidential candidates. So if somebody did want to shoehorn space into the agenda to talk about Dr. West, I think in the interest of fairness, we should try to give a little time to the other candidates as well. Thanks.
May I ask why the chat is disabled?
Because at last meeting, it ended up being a cat fight and it was not manageable, so we turned it off, but we can turn it back on.
This need to be managed.
If you
Well,
want to
it needs-
volunteer to manage, that's fine, but I don't want to manage the chat.
I don't know if it needs to be managed.
As a facilitator, I can't track the chat and the conversation at the same time. And if there's a bunch of stuff happening in the chat that's impacting the meeting and I'm not aware of it, we have a problem.
I think
So,
I'm leaving, but I just think the chat's for the people to be able to communicate, because it's a really difficult thing when there's 8 or 10 people here and we can't see each other. There's nothing, and the dialogue's just one way between you and the participants. So the chat's really about just us sharing information that it's not, I don't think you need to see anything that's in there. I'm just talking to the rest of the group. They can read it at their whim or whatever. But I just, it's unusual to be in a room like this and not have the chat be available for side conversations.
yes, and what happened at the last meeting was the side conversations turned into name calling and a bunch of pretty inflammatory stuff.
Never appropriate.
Yeah, I think I support the disabling for this meeting.
Nathalie, you're up next, and then Suzia.
I just wanted to respond to Chuck very quickly. Alan's proposal includes constitution and bylaws.
Okay. Suzia,
That's what I said, and it should be separated into 2 separate
I agree with Brian
things.
regarding the chat.
Okay, I turned it back on.
And I also agree with Amy. I think we should spend some time on our presidential candidates.
Great.
so I think we have, the only place I see the presidential nominating stuff is in the calendar for 2024, which is in the 2:30 to 3:30. And so again, if we're gonna add stuff to the agenda, which I totally understand the desire to do, then we have to decide what we're gonna do less of. And I, again, in my professional opinion, as a facilitator, will be astonished if y'all get through the stuff that's on this agenda before the lunch break in the amount of time we have allocated for it. So I am concerned if you try to reduce that amount of time. Now, if we get through that stuff faster than we think we're gonna, then there's extra room and we could, it's one of my favorite practices as a facilitator, actually, to have on the agenda a handful of items that we're going to talk about if we have time. And so we could put those there as a little, incentive for people to move along. So I'm happy to do that. I cannot recommend to you as your professional facilitator and thought partner here. I mean, just to be clear, y'all haven't made a decision about whether you're paying me to facilitate this meeting yet. So that decision needs to get made. But as your thought partner for your agenda construction, I think if you put less time on for the items before 2 o'clock, you will simply run over and not get to the things, which will be super frustrating for everybody. So my recommendation to you, if you want to do other things, is to put them on as an if we have time incentive for people. All right, so we're at 3:26. We have 4 minutes to go to the end of our scheduled meeting. So we're going to do 20-second comments right now. Chuck.
Take time away from the ballot petitions, the campaign stuff. Just give that 15 minutes and then put more time onto the presidential stuff, in my opinion.
That stuff's all in the same category, right? So it'll just take whatever time it takes. Dan. 20 seconds.
I agree with Chuck. I know Antonio. I like him. He's a fine fellow, but we have had reports about the Oregon People's Rebate effort at every single convention for the past 4 years. We all know about it.
Bob, 20 seconds.
Yeah, I just like to say that I think we'd be better off starting with things that are going to unify the members and make them enthused, rather than a big policy disagreement that we're not likely to arrive at a conclusion to.
Okay, Nathalie, 20 seconds.
So there will be 40 people, 50, maybe more people at the convention. They will not have necessarily heard about the Oregon People's Rebate or the Independent Redistricting Commission. That can be like uber quick. The reason why we need to have time to present the petition about the campaign finance reform is that Labor has introduced a competing petition that has a poison pill. They're trying to kick this petition out of the water. And we're also just hired an organizer, and we're getting ready to throw a major public education and fundraising campaign that's going to kick in for the holiday season, which is when a lot of people donate money. And so that's why this is so important. Like, this cannot be kicked out. We can make the IP 14 and 17 like uber short, but this is a major issue.
Great. So it seems like there might be a way to wedge some small amount of time for the presidential candidate stuff into the 2:30 to 3:30. I am hearing this desire to put some more unifying stuff up front. So I'm holding that for a second in my head here. Justin.
My idea would be to put the presidential stuff up front and center, because I think that's what people are most excited about. That's what I'm seeing on the ground in Eugene. That's what getting people turn out to meetings. That's what's getting Alan Sundell involved more. I think we should lead with that. It'll also set the tone, because I think people's position on that will sort of set the tone for the things that follow. Then I think we get into the bylaw discussion, all those presentation things. And then I think the carrot at the end is all of the legislative agenda, the campaign agenda.
Okay,
That would be my 2 cents.
I'm okay with that.
Connor?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that not everyone will have met or heard from Antonio and the Oregon People's Rebate, and hearing that kind of stuff, that section is definitely things that new people engaging with us. It will be the kind of the rather than this inside baseball stuff. If we had to get rid of or reduce, I'd suggest reducing the inside baseball and having more Antonio and reform stuff, because people want to know what we're about. And that's a good introduction if they haven't engaged with the party in a while.
Okay, great. Justin.
I think I forgot to lower my hand myself.
Okay, never mind then. Okay, so I am hearing, so we are at 3:29. Do we want to take another 15 minutes in this meeting to try to finalize an agenda?
Do I get 30 seconds? Just 30 seconds to the end?
Yes.
I'm sorry, did I have to have my hand up? I'm sorry. I wish that what my proposal was not seen as controversial. It's about trying to get us going in a new direction. And it's interesting that there's all these things that we want to talk about, and we really have no place to do it except when we come together in these centralized units for what supposedly is a decentralized party. My proposal is about decentralizing us so we can have these conversations ongoing, so that we would come together at a convention in a much more positive light, rather than feeling like we got to fight it out and have our minute to talk about things. That's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Brian. So I'm going to make a process. So first of all, do people have another 15 minutes?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Tasha.
You do. Are there other folks? Can people stay? Would you give me a thumbs up
Let's-
or a hands up or something, so that we know how many people can stay for another 15 minutes? I see most. I've got about half. Dan, yes. Who are we missing? Bob, can you hang out for another 15 minutes? I don't know about Bob. Okay, so, and I know Brian, you've got other stuff, so if you can.
Let's finish the agenda.
I would like to do that. I'm asking permission. It's
You have
part
it.
of my process.
You have it.
So the process proposal, the concrete process proposal, I think I am hearing, is to insert where the 1140, no, maybe not where the 11, well, if we're going to do this before we get to the controversial stuff, then we would insert it at 1140 to talk about the presidential stuff. I know your usual process is to adopt minutes at the beginning of the meeting, but since that is going to be a highly controversial thing, if the goal is to get people excited and feeling unified before we do that, then maybe we could do even a short, like 10-minute piece where we're looking at the calendar and a little bit about the presidential nominees.
I think Tasha, just very briefly, get the agenda done, finish with the minutes, then go into the presidential stuff, then go into the bylaws and then the initiatives. Don't
Right, so-
separate the minutes from the agenda with the presidents in between. I totally disagree with this. That's inappropriate.
Okay, that is not going to solve the problem that's not going to do what several people in the meeting just asked us to do, which is to lead with something non-controversial. So
That's why we have team building at the beginning of the meeting. Isn't that?
there's no team building at the beginning of the meeting. Do you see any team building? I see no team building. I see no team building anywhere in this meeting.
Well,
It doesn't exist.
then maybe we just.
Bob,
Yeah, I'd just like to say that if we get into controversial stuff, it's gonna be like this meeting. It's just gonna go on forever. So let's start off with something positive so that we can at least get through that and get a little enthusiasm that might carry them through part of the debates that are gonna come later and turn everyone off.
okay, so we're gonna take a vote right now because I don't know how else to navigate this in the like 17 minutes we have left here. So steering committee members, would you like to, before the approval of the minutes piece, do a 15-minute segment on presidential nominating convention, Portland changes of government, local and statewide races? I see 2 thumbs ups. I see Nathalie 3. Who else is on the steering committee?
I am, and
Yes, I see your thumbs down, Chuck. Connor's a
Coordinator.
thumbs up.
that's stupid.
Suzia,
Susie has a thumbs up. Okay, so I think if we're taking a vote, then that's what we're gonna do. So Nathalie, you're gonna put,
Can I have a clarification on the agenda then?
is this clarification
In-
question?
Yes, if you
Okay.
just said 15 minutes is going to be dedicated to quote presidential whatever, who's going to give information? What presidential whatevers are going to be represented?
Well, that would be useful to talk about. I mean, all of that stuff was already on the agenda in the bottom and
Well,
nobody had
It wasn't
clarified.
fleshed out, and now we're jumping ahead.
can I suggest,
These are
Chuck, that you propose something that you want to talk if you want to participate? I was going to do part of that and introduce the process, introduce the candidate and so on. You're welcome to take part of it and to propose a draft of what you want to present. You want to do that?
If I may, I think this would be an item for introduction. I think this would be mostly an informative 15 minutes where we inform the members on what the process is for endorsing a particular candidate. And we just kind of introduce them to maybe the key names involved. Maybe a short discussion, but I think we want to kind of stay away from making it yet another divisive issue. If Chuck wants time for RFK, I'm willing to give him the floor for RFK.
He's a Democrat.
Oh, I know.
So. Okay. So I am, your processes around convention say that the agenda should be distributed 14 days before the convention, which I think is today. Is that correct? Or tomorrow? Today?
Tomorrow.
So, and clearly there are still details to sort out about who's presenting what in the sections we have not done a lot of talking about. But it seems like we can maybe finalize this version of the agenda, which has all of the headers, all of the like basic stuff. Send a version out today that includes the basic agenda, and do another meeting where we can continue to sort out who's presenting when inside the existing agenda structure, not making any changes to the agenda that we're presenting, but finishing the planning, right? For how is this actually going to look on the ground? So I do it all the time. Like, we create the handout version, we share the handout version, and then I create a facilitator's version, which includes more details about exactly how this is going to go. So that's my proposal for my process proposal for you, because I don't know what else to do at this stage in the game. I think we would have to clean this up, remove all of the comments, probably move some of the content, like the explanatory content, into a facilitator's level agenda, and then share out something that's clear about what's going to happen when, but that still allows us to sort out exactly who's presenting what when, and who's, you know, what the ins and outs of that are going to look like. How do people feel about that?
Sounds good, because we need to decide also on the voting process, and we want to have traceable voting. And so the steering committee is going to vote.
So
Process, yeah.
can we set up, can we agree to, so the first two sections seem like they could go out as is. We can get rid of some of this. The second section, the whole like intro to the sub bullets under present the proposed agenda, does not have to be on the thing we share out with everybody. That's a process thing that can stay in this version, but when we make the handout version, we should let it, you know, people don't need to see all of our background, right?
Do you want to leave this here, that we're going to use mural, and for people to kind of, it doesn't need to
Yes.
be on the agenda. We can do it in the announcement, or.
However you want to do that, but
But
we do want,
so people can kind of have access to it easily, and then we'll just send it out also in the announcements.
sure. So yes, and we should think, Nathalie, if you want, I can email you the language that I usually use when I'm inviting people into a meeting where we're going to use mural, so that you just have it and you don't have to make it up. So I can send you that. And so the rest of those standard bullets under the 1115 could just stay, I think. The 1140 could stay as is. The 1155.
This needs to be linked something to the.
Right, so there needs to be a link there. There needs to be, and again, my understanding, which I like, just to clarify, is that I don't know whether we need to put this in the agenda, or whether we just need to link, like, reflecting decision and voting processes at those conventions, and then put that language insert it into the January and March meetings and link to that so people can see it. I don't know.
You're right, we should just probably put it in the minutes and just vote on it. I'm fine with that. I just want to move forward, push things through the large group consensus so we can have more of a discussion and have it voted in January.
Okay, so what is the physical process for adding that language to the January and March minutes?
Can you share your screen so we know what we're talking about?
It's you can just go to the proposed agenda that's in the link to the website. and then you'll see it.
And and what section are you talking about exactly?
The one that you've been arguing over and over and over and over and over and over.
We're here. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So we're talking about taking this language and plunking it physically into the January and March minutes, and then making a link here so that what the agenda does is to send people to the January and March minutes, and just leaving this sentence under number 1 as it is, but not having this sitting on the agenda, just integrated into these minutes.
I am fine with that because we need to have a productive meeting. Dan and Chuck, are you okay with that?
So the pink language that says added language is going to be, so what we need is, so someone can click on this.
So we would
number
add a
one.
link here to January and a link here to March so that people could go to the minutes. And then in those minutes would be this language.
Well, I know what would be that language would be at the top of the review.
It
For
would be,
example-
for each decision where that decision was made, it would be added to that decision, because some decisions were used like, there were some decisions they didn't go through like members present at the convention. So for all of the votes where members present at the convention and where we had a disagreement about sending or not absentee voting would be added to those agenda items in each minute. Then.
I think this is just a separate agenda item for the minutes, and I think there should just be a separate document that links to the actual minutes. I've highlighted the relevant minutes.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna add a link in January and March to
Okay.
the minutes of January and the minutes of March. That's
Mhm.
what we're gonna do, just like what you're saying.
Okay, well,
Right.
I've got, those two are supplied.
Right,
Yeah, they're
but
in the
but then
folders for the convention.
this language that I've got highlighted on the screen needs to be added to those minutes so that people know that what they're voting on is those minutes that includes that language
Mhm.
May I speak, Tasha?
very
What's-
quickly.
What's going on here procedurally is the SCC is asking the convention to add this text to the minutes. It's not appropriate for it to add it to the minutes and then ask the convention to accept them as the minutes. The convention needs to know that there's a proposal to add this. And I would still like it to know that the language that I submitted in the comments over on the sidebar is another proposal.
Okay, that settles it. Tasha, we're not gonna agree because as you saw, this is a sticking point and they wanna make sure, there's, so.
Okay,
we're just
So we're
mention-
we're gonna leave this here then. We're
Can
gonna
I
leave it-
direct reply to that quickly?
It doesn't matter because we need to move on. Everybody's gonna know that this group voted to disallow absentee voting and that the votes were passed by people who voted at the result. It's transparent, it's clear, it's factual, that's it. We've gone over it for like 2 hours. That's what's gonna happen. It's in the agenda. The steering committee voted for it. It's in the draft agenda, period. That's it. Thank you very much, Tasha.
Okay,
Let's
so
move on.
wait, Nathalie, wait, this is a process I need to get
Sorry.
clear as a facilitator, right? So what I think we are then voting on is this proposal to add that to the language
Mhm.
before we accept the January and March minutes. I think that's what Dan is asking for, is to say the convention needs to decide whether we're adding that language to the minutes. And then they can adopt the minutes, but they can't adopt the minutes without first voting on the language. So we need to change this item
Okay, great. Sounds
so
good.
that that's clear, right? So that might look like
1A and 1B.
vote
Mhm.
on January and March minutes. And then A would be adding the language, and then B would be approving minutes as amended or not, depending on the vote.
Sounds good.
Well,
Quick question.
Yes.
Well, aren't minutes really just a reflection of what happened at the meeting? That's my understanding of what minutes are.
Right, but there is a
and Natalie,
fundamental disagreement about what happened at the meeting and what that record needs to
about what
look
happened at the meeting?
No,
and
about
what the
about
record
the
of that
minutes,
needs to look like.
about the minutes. So we're
Well, I
working-
mean, Natalie, did you say that someone like forced you to remove them from the minutes at some point?
yes,
Wasn't that what I heard at the last meeting? I mean,
yes. But
That's
you know,
I don't
just-
understand why they. I don't
Let's-
understand why they were
I
removed
really-
in the first
I
place.
really don't want to go down this rabbit hole. It will work to ask the convention to vote on adding the language. You can talk about it as adding the language back in or not, but adding this language and then approving the minutes as amended or not, we'll just slide through.
it would just allow everybody to see what happened.
Right. So, and we're not going to get to a consensus inside this group about what actually happened or what's important or any of those things. So we just need to leave it to the convention. And I understand that Dan has another language proposal, and y'all can decide as the steering committee whether you want to include that language as an alternative or not. But he can propose it from the floor, and we can capture it on Mural, and it can be part of the vote process. Right, so
What is Dan's proposal?
Not to mention that you guys voted not to allow absentee votings. He wants
Because
to
that's-
whitewash.
Yeah, that's a prejudiced,
Oh, that's a factual.
well, the fact
let's
is.
not argue about that again, people. You spent 10 minutes on it last time. We're not going to argue about that.
Okay, but
So-
if I may, I do recall that there seemed to be agreement last time that if I came up with my proposal, that it would be included in this agenda, and I
Sure,
did.
let's-
It's right there in the comments. So if you could please include that, then I'll be glad to move on. I just wanted to have a fair presentation.
Good,
To
we'll just
the-
make
to
it
the
really
membership.
clear that you don't want people to know that there was.
Oh, no.
Yeah, let's do
That-
that. Yeah, let's do that. I totally agree. I think it's a
Okay,
great
and I
idea.
hope you're paying attention to that, Tasha. I just want my proposed text included fairly
I-
next to your proposed
Yep.
text,
Okay,
as
so-
seemed to be agreed last time. That's all. Is that too
It's
much to ask?
either one or we have Dan's language.
Yeah,
the insert
decision
here.
taken among those present by majority decision of attendee voters at the convention.
You just
period.
add it
Yes,
as
yes.
to, please.
Yep, that's what he wants here.
Okay, so please add it.
Let's
And-
good.
Just
Like this,
Tasha-
everybody knows. Great. I like it.
Thank you.
It's very good. Perfect.
so that's gonna go. We still need to, so this is,
We're not going to use open vote on this. This can be.
we
short.
just chill for a second, Chuck. We're gonna decide that at the next meeting. Okay, so not on handout version. Because we haven't made that decision yet. We're gonna leave it in this version. We're not gonna put it in the handout version. All
Tasha,
right.
it's a convention rule. It's a matter of convention rule to type. the
I
vote.
don't want to talk about this in the last 20, we're 5 minutes over our 5 minutes. We're gonna have another meeting about this, Dan, just chill. Okay, so I'm checking in about this word approval of Chuck's proposal, because I think I heard Chuck saying that he could just unilaterally send the Liberty resolutions through the larger group consensus.
That's
So we
correct.
might want to say endorsement of or something to give the convention a chance to know that this is happening and to be clear that they like or do not like this idea. But it sounds like Chuck has already made the commitment to take it through the process. So Chuck, you could say that and then invite people to endorse that process. I don't know.
Can we
What-
move it to an informational section rather than endorsement?
So if it were me, I would think that you would want the convention's enthusiasm about this rather than just informing them. That this would give you a sense of where the convention is at about these things, and that might be a useful democratization process. Bob, is your hand up? I can't.
Yeah, my
tell.
hand is.
Okay,
Yeah, and
sorry.
the only thing I want to say is, and I realize this is a late last minute suggestion, but it seems to me that this whole issue is whether the Green Liberty proposals were adopted or not. I mean, the whole issue is, was this legitimately coming out of the convention? And I don't think that we're going to arrive at a conclusion to that. And what I'd like to suggest is maybe we just resubmit those proposals to this convention and let them vote on them.
That's exactly what we're trying to do, Bob, is to
Right,
send the proposals through the large group consensus so we can actually try to arrive at a consensus and vote on them in January.
January, not in this meeting.
Not in
That's
this-
the goal,
January.
to
Can
take
I
more time with them.
Bob, okay, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Green Liberty resolutions were
Oh,
given the blessing.
Yeah,
I
so
never,
No,
let's
I
not
know that.
argue. Let's
never
not argue about it.
represented-
That's the point of disagreement, Chuck. Let's not argue about it.
This
We
is the
don't-
place we're not gonna go.
Yeah.
Right? So I am proposing to you as a process thing that you invite this convention to bless the movement of these two things into the large group consensus, which is a way to engage 40 to 50 people in being aware of this, in
But we
giving
have.
it a blessing, which will hopefully mean that more people will engage in the process, which I thought was the point.
It is exactly the point. Thank you very much. Let's move on.
No, the point is that the SCC has broken our rules and only the
This
convention.
is a
can set the
past
governance.
thing that you are not gonna resolve in this meeting.
And the
it's not gonna
convention
be
needs to
resolved.
resolve it. That's
Chuck,
why we're
remember
putting
what I
forth-
told you, that repeating something over and over and over is a form of abuse, and you're going to be moderated if you continue. We
Like-
don't
like Barry
agree.
is you're the-
Everybody take a
Like
breath.
accusing me of
Natalie, that
stealing.
you're-
Everybody
you're
take a breath.
How's that
determined
compared to
to not
accusing me of
allow a
stealing?
confirmation. That's what you said.
Stop. Stop. So we're gonna stay focused on the agenda right now. On the agenda is not a discussion about did the SCC or did the SEC not break the rules? We're not going there. The discussions that are the focus of this are, can we agree on a set of January and March meeting minutes that say clearly what happened? And then acknowledging the movement of the resolutions into this larger group process for consideration by a larger pool of people and reconsideration at the January convention. And given how controversial this stuff is, it seems to me to be worthwhile to put it in the record for the convention and ask for an endorsement by the convention of these things.
Yes, that's good. Let's move on. When should we meet next time?
Well, so hang on one second, Natalie, because we need to do that, but we also need to make sure that we understand what's going to be on the handout agenda that needs to go out today, right? So this is going to be,
Exactly.
which is going to be here. These, I would suggest that, so the buy OPA vote needs to come out of this.
I think that
Because
that's
we haven't made that decision yet, right? Again, leave it in this version because we need to talk about it, right? Do you have commitments from Alan? We have commitments from Brian. Do you have a commitment from Alan to speak about the?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So those could go in. I would pull the max and the question marks and just flag it. And then you can remove this is facilitator.
Thank you very much, Tasha.
This is facilitator stuff. So again, we want it in the version that we continue to talk about, right? Don't pull it out of this version. just make a copy of it and make that the handout version and pull the stuff that doesn't belong here.
So
So this,
you want me to make a copy of this, so for us to work on, and then,
yes,
Okay.
and then do the edits out of the stuff that's going to be in the handout version and not. Okay, so we're doing lunch in 30 minutes, which is not ideal, but probably necessary. And then this stuff. And these times are going to be off now because you added 15 minutes at the beginning, so you need to go in and adjust the times. Yes?
excuse me, I'm just copying it in the, okay, I think.
Okay, so point of order, just as far as like meeting our own bylaws, following our own rules about publishing something to the membership 14 days in advance. We have at least a working agenda that we can share with everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I just made a copy for the facilitators, and I'll send everybody a list. And this is going to be the minutes that are going, the draft agenda that's now linked to the webpage, and that's going to go out to everybody who registered and the supporting members in general. So we're trying to clean it up so it's just doesn't have any of the comments of how we're going to vote, what we're going to vote, and so on. And out of this agenda that's going to go to our supporting members, I'm going to remove all of the comments. Those comments are in the agenda that the copy that we're going to be using for the facilitators.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
my other wondering right now is whether leaving lunch until 2:15 is sane and sensible, or whether we should take that lunch break at 1:15 and then come back to the bylaws after people have had a half an hour to break and eat.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea just because tensions are high, people, blah, blah. It's just
This is
like
1:15 to 1:45, and this will be 1:45 to 2:45, and Nathalie, you can move stuff around, which I shouldn't try to do because it'll just look totally horrible.
Why
It's only
not just put lunch at the brain break after the minutes are attended to?
because that's too early.
Oh, come on. I just add another 10 minutes onto that and just take.
please,
a
can
little
you
break.
hold? There is a reason why we do it, and this is from people who facilitated for 20, 30 years.
Right. That was my suggestion, that we have a break and then another break. It really does work better. Okay. So are we feeling clear about what's going to go out to the full group today? And then we are essentially locked into this unless we want to propose changes at the convention, which we could do, right? We could say, as an agenda committee, we continue to fuss with this and we would like to propose this little modification, just like anybody else can propose a modification.
In light of which, I think I kind of object to deleting the comments, because those comments will inform the people that are reading this agenda of any dispute as to, and the conversations that have been going on about it. And if they're not informed, then they're not going to
Thank
really
you for
be
your
up to speed.
suggestion. How does the steering committee feel about it? I'm voting to remove the comments. Anybody else? Anybody opposed to removing the comments from the steering committee?
I'm honestly not sure on which would be better.
You're not sure which would be better? So
Well,
right now,
what's the
there's-
argument for moving them, I guess? Remind me.
The
Well-
argument, well, I mean, a bunch of them are technical at this point. Also, there's one here that says block and no clarity about, there's a bunch of stuff that's not.
For
Now, when you
transparency.
take a roll call,
So
it's,
maybe
right,
so
there's,
maybe we just add
this
the
is process
context
stuff.
at the convention. Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with removing them. We can add the context at the convention discussion.
yes, absolutely, that's what it's for. So before we go to hands, okay, it's 4:00. We've been at this for 2 hours. I am going to ask us to take a clear steering committee vote on removing the comments from the draft agenda that's shared. And then I'm going to ask us to set the next meeting and talk about stuff there, because I think I'm I need to go. I have
Yes.
other stuff to do today.
Yes.
So Justin, I saw your thumbs up for removing the comments.
Sorry, it's a thumbs up from me too.
Thumbs up from Natalie, thumbs up from Connor. Amy, you were nodding your head. Is that a thumbs up on removing comments?
Not on the steering committee.
Well, I can't vote. I'm just
Yeah.
agreeing that it's a good idea.
So who else is on the steering committee? Chuck?
I am, I favor,
Susie,
I favor keeping comments as part of the record present. But I think a separate document could be copy pasted, and then the final agenda could be posted that doesn't have the comments. So they're
That's
just.
exactly what we're voting on having.
Okay.
Right.
the
Right.
public-
All I'm
Tasha's
saying is
doing.
the thing we post right now should be clean.
Yes,
So
and
people
we
are
do
looking-
have an agenda with all of the comments. We copied it and copied all of the comments. So that's available for anybody who wants.
And it's in the public docs, anybody can go find it.
Yes, love, it's there.
Okay.
So Chuck, you are not trying to block removing
No,
the
as
comments.
long
Who
as-
else is on the steering committee who hasn't voted yet?
Susie,
Suzia, what do you think? Bob, are you on the steering committee?
Yeah, I'm on drop comments.
Okay, I think we have a majority to drop comments.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Okay, so when are we meeting again to try to hash the rest of this out, including making a decision whether I'm facilitating?
I think that the decision about you facilitating, I hope that you want to. We're gonna talk about this with the steering committee and I'll report back to you.
Okay,
yep.
Great.
We'll make a decision soon.
Okay,
As soon as
great.
possible.
Just let me know ASAP because if I
Absolutely, for sure.
hold on to that time, if you don't
I'm
need
going to
to.
grovel.
So,
Thanks
sorry
for
to
staying late.
interject, but
Thank you,
don't we have
everybody.
don't we have an SEC meeting tomorrow where we could discuss that? First Sunday?
I thought we just had one. Did we just have one last week?
You know what, let's
I'm
take it out,
confused.
let's take it out separately and powwow separately. I think that there is I have a sense that there is a good agreement of what we're gonna do. Let's take it out of here. When shall we
Okay,
meet next
so-
time?
We'll have like an emergency meeting, so to speak,
Okay.
just to handle this decision.
I think we should pay our facilitator. That's a
Yeah.
proposal.
Yeah, well, yeah, we did. And when shall we meet with you, Tasha? When are you available?
So next week is complicated for me. I have time.
Do you want to meet tomorrow evening, Sunday evening?
I could do that. I could also meet.
Do you have?
My
children?
Monday is pretty flexible. It's a holiday, I know, and for many people, that's going to be family time. And I don't I know we had at least one person missing today, I think, because they had family commitments. So I'm a little dubious about doing it over the holiday weekend. Isn't Felipe not here because he had a family commitment? So I could meet Wednesday evening at 7:30. I have time between now and Wednesday evening, and then I have a bunch of family commitments, including a bunch of out-of-town people coming into town on Thursday, which takes me through Monday.
Justin, you're the
So-
one who has a family. How does Wednesday evening work for you? Oh, he may have dropped.
For whom are you asking?
He was
Justin,
asking Justin, who
Justin.
has parenting duties.
parenting.
Let me ask the question more broadly. Would Sunday evening, tomorrow evening, or Wednesday evening be better? And I'm going to request that somebody check in with Felipe before you make a decision.
Yeah, can we, I don't want to hold you. Can I just powwow everybody? you know,
Great. So
outside
I'm
of-
going to put a hold, on my calendar for Sunday at 7:30 and Wednesday at 7:30. And you all let me know which one you want. How's that?
Perfect, thank you very much. Do you have
Okay.
children? Do you want, I'll send ice cream to your house?
It's okay. We're good over
What,
here.
hey, Natalie, what are
Yes.
the final agenda issues to be resolved?
Oh my goodness, voting, facilitate, it's just really mostly technical stuff.
Well, the vote-
It's
oh,
process stuff.
oh,
process stuff.
Okay, that's pretty big. Yep.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna head out. I will see you all either tomorrow night or Wednesday night.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Tasha. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tasha. I hope you'll be able to join us through all of this somehow.
Bye, guys.